afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to extend my great appreciation to the organizer and wider to allow us to have a joint session between Southcentre and the wider. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Li Xuan. I'm the lead economist and acting coordinator of innovation, technology, and intercorporate program at Southcentre. As you have known, Southcentre is an intergovernmental organization which is with headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. Our major mandate is to facilitate and provide our strategical view for our member states to be integrated into the international negotiation in this environment. Today, my presentation is about patent applications and indicators of the geography of innovation activity. The background of this recent topic is on the basis of recently released the World Industrial Organization. They released WIPO Patent Report 2007, and during this report, WIPO says that there is a changing geography of innovation to the Northeast Asia, particularly in China. So this presentation we're going to explore what is the underlying situation behind. My presentation will cover 4 parts. Firstly, we would have a brief introduction of the WIPO patent report. And secondly, we are going to introduce what is the Chinese patent growth, how to reinterpret this patent growth. Thirdly, we would like to address the problems with patent application as indicator in general. During this session, we're going to provide a legal interpretation of different regimes, particularly like 2 developed countries and 2 developing countries, marked down to the United States, EU, Brazil, and India. So from this legal comparison, we're going to understand better how patent and application imply. And then in the last session, we're going to conclude.
Can you make it to?
Well, you have 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. Okay?
Yes. And during the WIPO report, it concludes that there is changing geography for innovation to the Northeast Asia, with emphasis in China. Basically, there are 2 assumptions under this report conclusion. First one is patent application is a reliable indicator of innovation capacity. Secondly, the resident patent filing is a reliable indicator of innovation capacity of a country. What the definition of the patent and the resident patent filing is? It means the growth for which the first named applicant or signee is a resident of the state concerned. And non-resident patent filing means the applicants outside of the country concerned. So under these 2 indicators, supported by some tomographer data show, that WIPO demonstrates that there is a changing geography of innovation. The more details, the evidence provided by WIPO the patent report is, from this chart, we can see China is one of the most largest receiving country of the patent filing. In addition to that, China has the sharp rise in patent filing in China with a rate of 32.9%. This, in addition to this, the patent filing in general, we can see that the recent patent filing in China is growth at 42% growth rate. And in comparison, we can also see the non-resident patent filing is at a rate of 23.6%. Both the resident patent filing and non-resident patent filing are ranked most, the first one among all the countries. So on this basis, WIPO come up with the conclusion that China is representative of the most innovative country in 2005. So there are some questions arising initially. In terms of the patent classification, there are two categories in China. According to Chinese patent system, first one will be the UCP model. Second is the design, industry design, and thirdly will be the invention. Among these three categories, the first two are not subject to the Southcentre patent examination. What does it mean? It means there is no technical threshold for any applicant to obtain a full patent in China. The implication of this regime, of this patent regime in China, implies the total number of the patents will be overstated, even by there is no technical threshold even provided. So in this case, if we look at in more detail what is composition of patent application in China, the first line we can see is the three invention, UCP model, and design, where the total number of the UCP model and design enjoys 54% of the total patents in China. And in terms of growth rate of design, look at the blue number, 47.4%. This is the largest share of the growth rate in comparison to another two types. So this means the invention is rather limited if we look at into the more details another two parts of the composition. So the message from this comparison is a sharp rise in patent filing does not necessarily represent the higher level or increasing level of the innovation capacity in China. In addition to the composition of the patent, we can look at the patent application growth from the resident and non-resident patent comparison. Here, there is one important issue we have to address is different from the WIPO, the concept of the resident patent. In China, the resident patent is not defined as a patent filed by the transnational. It includes the patent filed by multinational company, the Chinese branch. So if you look at this chart, we have the two types of, in terms of invention patent, foreign application and domestic application. Amongst this one, nearly half are filed by foreigners. And under the domestic patent application, 1/3 are filed by individuals and 2/3 by enterprises. But among these enterprises, 1/2 was filed by the joint ventures or wholly foreign-owned enterprises. So we can see the two types, the 46% they are filed by foreigners as well as the joint venture. This composes the majority of the invention patent in China. This does not necessarily mean the real level of the Chinese nationals, their innovation capacity. So if we look at the invention and non-invention among in this table, we can see the invention, the patent is only 24% of the total invention applicants. It means every 100 applications filed by the resident, only 24 are invention patents. In contrast, every 100 patents filed by non-residents, basically the foreign companies sectors, only 14 are non-invention patents, which is the low value of the UCP model and design. So this is very much different in shape of the patent of the invention and non-invention. This is the table that we can see the top 5 sectors of technology innovation in our invention patent. And here we can see the most patented is digital computing, etc. And if we look at the compare the home applicants and foreign applicants, we can see in China the domestic patents majority are concentrated on the natural product and pollinators. What does it mean? Basically, there is a majority of the natural products coming from the chemical Chinese medicine. We're going to have a brief discussion about that in detail. What is the value of that patent? So, and in contrast, in terms of foreign applicants, majority of the patent is in the area of the more higher technology areas, which will come to discussion. And this is one example in the information recording. What we can see is the total number of the applications in the year 2004 was 448. Among the total number of the patents, nearly 90% of the patents are filed by the non-residents, and only 10% around is filed by the residents. Bear in mind, among the 10% still include the joint venture and wholly companies by the joint venture. So here we can see most patents in audio and video under protection are filed by non-residents. This is the graph. We can see the patents for audio and video related technology are controlled majority by Japan, United States, Europe, and Korea. Very few patents, the grand patents, are held by Chinese. This is just an example of the information recording, how the innovation is presented in this indicator. And this is another example we can see. What we understand is that in terms of invention, we have two types of categories. One is the basic patent, another is the surrounding patent. The basic patent is more fundamental, which has a higher monopoly power in the market. And the second one is more incremental, which is always subject to the authorization of the first patent, according to the agreement. And in this case, what we can see is most resident patents filed by transnationals are incremental. To be more to illustrate, what we can see is in year 2003, the majority of the patents, around over 100, was filed in the area of power transmission and structural device, which is the core technology in this area. And those patents are filed by non-residents of in China. In 2004, the patent was filed, but still within the area of the core technology, in the area of the control methodology. In 2005, what we can see, the more application is in the area of the more incremental application. And if we compare the two major patent applicants, which are Toyota in Japan and Tsinghua University in China, what we can see is that Toyota has filed the patent, majority of the core patents in 2003 and 2004. It means they already control the market with all the core technology. And in year 2005, what we can see is Tsinghua University trying to file applications, but most of them are in areas of incremental.
How can you tell which one is basic and surrounding?
How can I interpret what is the base and what is surrounding?
How can you tell from the patent?
Okay. Basically, if we look at IPC, there is a technical specification. All the patents, all technology is kind of a graph. We can draw the mapping for all the different technology. Some will be located in the upstream of the whole production, and some others will be located in the downstream. And all the downstream will establish the first patent in the production. And this one is about the product patent and product by product patent. Here is just a simple illustration of the chemical compound. What we can see is that normally for the pharmaceutical area, because of the clear the structure in the chemical compound, it can be protected under the product patent, which is under the 1994, the TRIPS agreement was introduced to WTO. But in comparison, traditional Chinese medicine, what I mentioned earlier, it is one of the biggest national product patents filed by Chinese. It is difficult in terms of their characteristics to define the formulas. Then, in practice, how to determine how to apply their patent protected traditional medicine is using the product by process. It will largely diminish their product patent, their economic power. And then here, what we can see is that product patent provides for absolute protection of the product, whereby their product patent provide only in terms of their very small market level. So what we will see is that if we have different process, then the third person always can trace back to another process to get the same kind of the traditional medicine patent. It means the value of the traditional medicine patent is much lower compared to the same number of the patents in the area of the pharmaceutical. So so far we have demonstrated their numbers in terms of Chinese patent growth. Now we would like to move into a more legal interpretation of their patent application indicator, and we make comparisons of the several countries. What we can see in general, there are differences in terms of the patentable subject matter, and we also have difference in their patent exemption standards. Also, design of the patent system is different, and also the scope right, etc. This all matters with institutional setting. So basically, the difference in the patent regime at national level will imply the version of the grant of the patent in practice. And then it will make difficulty to compare the patent account in both the patent filing as well as patent grant. So this is the general framework what we have to bear in mind. Whenever we interpret patent filing, this is the one that obstacle have to address. And this is the difference in the protectable subject matter. We chose the biotechnology patent as one example. We can see that in the United States, all biotechnology related patents are allowed provided they satisfy a higher disclosure criteria. And in the patent, in the plants and animals are included within the biotechnology patent. And in EU, there is no specific exclusion by the EU law, and in the petition allows plant and animal compatibility issue. And in Brazil, it's quite different. The living beings in whole or in part except microorganisms excluded. A natural living beings in whole or in part, and biological material, including the genome of the germs and etc., are excluded. And India also excludes plant animals but includes microorganisms, etc. So this we can see the subject matter under the different national regime is quite different. Similarly, we can also see in the software patent, for instance, like in the United States, all kind of this method in internet related patents are allowed. But in Brazil, a computer program per se is not allowed. And in India, computer program per se is excluded along with the other sectors and the technology, which is lack of the investment. So these are the subject matters. What we can see is the difference in the different contexts. And this is one supportive subject matter for the clinical medicine. But we can see use this graph as a basis to understand what is the patentability issue. Basically, there are products, usage, and methods are considered as subject matter. This is unique in China, which is not in any other countries available. And what we can see, if we look into the traditional Chinese medicine, there are two types of their TMK. One is traditional Chinese medicine, another is traditional indigenous medicine. And further to that, if we look at patentability into the novelty, inventiveness, and into application, what we can see is for most non-codified traditional Chinese medicine, it is unpredictable. But in terms of the codified traditional medicine, Chinese medicine, you know, it will lose the knowledge issue, so the patent will be rejected. So in terms of TRK, for the difference, what is the key message of this table is the patentability is determined by the country the national patent regime at national level. And this is a unique practice in China in terms of PK. But in terms of other areas, every country, every national patent office has the right to determine their level. So thus, the one patent or patent application does not have the same platform to compare. This is in terms of the design of the patent, we can see in the United States, there are no UC model, and but in Brazil, they do have, just like in China. And in terms of design patent, United States they have design, and other countries, like EU, Brazil, and India, do not have. This is in terms of scope of right. Switzerland, last year, they amended patent regime, particularly with respect to the biotechnology. What they amended is the key message is to change the broad, their absolute product protection into the functionality protection. So this is depending on the level of the innovation, the master innovation level, Switzerland makes such a kind of effort, trying to stimulate the local innovation in the long term, to maintain the long-term competitiveness in the long run. So we can look at, this is always changeable, so it means that how many patent applications will be changing depending on the patent regime in the different periods. So this so far we have demonstrated different the legal settings, and what we come to conclusion of my presentation is the sources of the misinterpretation of vital patent report. There are two types of source. First one is the difference in patent regime and national level, which may affect the patent account. And secondly, difference in patent value, which shall not be put on equal footing, particularly when the patent is on the upstream and on the downstream. It should be treated differently. And on this basis, what we understand, the patent application and resident patent filing as indicators should be adjusted when interpreting their innovation in a global context. The way forward, what we suggest is we have to develop a proper set of indicators to assess and monitor innovation capacity internationally. Thank you.